Start on YouTube. Yeah, we're streaming. Hello, everyone. Welcome Instagram, YouTube, Instagram. So I'll be doing this as always. Happy week, happy Monday. Hello. I am, first of all, coming from, again, another week of, this is so perfect for me. Like, I'm really doing these lives this live start from a message I need to hear out loud so much in this moment, right? Because I am in the middle of a transition of consciously uncoupling from my partner of 10 years. And actually, today, you can see my room, you can hear the echo a lot different than other days, because the space is emptier because I've been moving this weekend. And so next lives are going to be in a whole different space. And I just want to say that because it's important to remind you guys and remind myself that we never have things figured out, and that we all in a process of, sharing what works and sharing our insights and sharing, our lights and our shadows throughout the whole process, because that's what we sort of need the most. I think a lot of our challenges come from the not having the tools, or the lack of the tools, or we didn't learn how to really be connected in our shadows and our lights. When I say shadow, what I mean is all of those things that are part of our human experience that we tend to feel ashamed of, or that we want to hide, or we want to pretend they don't exist, or we want to act as if, that's not me. If I don't put attention on that, it'll just disappear. But the reality is that we live in a dual system and a dual world, and that there's a lot of things that we came here to transmute, to mute, to transform, to evolve new qualities. And in order for us to get those qualities out of our, express them and be that channel that we want to be, we need to first accept who we are completely. And that's how we're going to be able to connect with ourselves, which most of us have a hard time doing because we were never connected with when we were kids, right? I am generalizing, of course, it's not everyone. But I just want to say, I just want to remind you and remind me how vulnerability is so essential for us to live a fulfilled and expanded life in this moment. And for all human beings, we need to show ourselves the way that we are, with our sadness and with our happiness. And yes, within that, we have the capability of do a dance with our willpower, and where we're going to put our attention, and what is it that we want to expand in this world. But expanding and manifesting doesn't mean that I am going to suppress the things that are negative, or the things that I don't like about myself, or the things or the mistakes that I did, or the things that we complain about in other people. It's not about suppressing them. It's not about acting as if they're not there, or ignoring them, or enabling them, or etc., etc. Auntie Tina, yes, hi. So glad to have you guys here. Okay, so what's the subject of today? I have some notes, stories to share, examples to share. I want to share more examples. And the subject today is notice. So what my objective today is not to give you a medicine, a tool, or to give you a route out of anything, but instead to sort of bring about things to help you notice when and why are you and me arguing with reality, and what's the effect of that in our life, and what's the result of that in our life, and where does that come from? And this is a really interesting subject because there is a higher power. We all agree on this, right? There is an intelligence governing this universe for sure. Right? There's some intelligence force that is breathing through me every day because I don't really do anything to breathe, right? There is an intelligence that somehow makes an acorn become a huge, gigantic tree, right? There is an intelligence that makes an embryo a baby. So there's an intelligence in this universe. And that intelligence has a view of life that I, in my experience, don't have access to, right? At a cellular level in my mind, I cannot see what that intelligence can see. I have all the abilities and parts and I'm composed of it, but I cannot see it, right? And so my connection to that intelligence is my intuition. My intuition is like the bridge that connects my faith onto that big picture that I cannot see, right? So I cannot see it, but my intuition lets me know, sort of like as if you're in a dark room, right? You're in a dark room and you can't see much and you're just like, okay, let me know where I should go. And the success of that guidance comes solely from our ability to trust and to have faith on that power, that resource, that intelligence that is already what we are part of. Okay, so where does this subject come from? The subject comes from the idea that if I not only not have faith, but let's say I'm neutral, right? I don't have faith in my intuition, or I don't have faith in that which I cannot see. But instead, I actually go against it, right? Thinking that I know better, right? Thinking that I'm here to control and decide because I know better. Or going against that pool of the love intelligence that's governing this universe because I'm afraid of pain, right? Because I don't want to suffer. I don't want to go through what seems to be a really harsh situation. And so I then go argue with reality, right? I argue with the circumstances that life is putting in front of me because one, I don't want to go through that pain. And because two, I don't necessarily trust that this is the best for me. And because three, I am so afraid of uncertainty because I cannot see, right? And the more afraid I am of uncertainty, the least faith I have in life. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. The more I'm afraid of uncertainty, the least faith I have in life, because life is uncertainty. Life equals uncertainty. Why? Because in order for life to evolve, and it is evolving whether we want it or not, it goes through the uncertainty. Why? Because we cannot see the big picture. So for us, it's uncertain. And so in order for us to connect to that uncertainty, we need self-trust, we need intuition, we need faith. Otherwise, we're arguing with reality. So I wanted to bring this subject to you today because I'm thinking, well, a good hint then to self-diagnose ourselves that we're arguing with that we are not trusting our intuition is when we're arguing with reality. And you might ask yourself, well, what do you mean, Daddy, by arguing with reality? Like, I don't think I'm arguing with reality. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a couple of moments so that we start highlighting those moments and observe ourselves. The invitation today is to observe ourselves, like when I am arguing with reality. Because if I find myself arguing with reality, then what does that mean? That means I'm not connected with my intuition. I'm not connected with self-trust. Therefore, I don't trust life. If I don't trust life, then I'm not aligned with evolution. Then I'm not aligned with the higher potential within me. Then I'm not aligned with a better version of myself that is always calling through me. Yeah. And so when am I arguing with reality? Because a lot of times it can show up in our life so easily to identify, right? And other times it's just very hidden because it's hidden underneath our subconscious beliefs, our limiting beliefs, all of that subconscious programming that we don't have access to at a conscious level, right? So the first thing that I want to say is like, you're arguing and I am arguing with reality when we pretty much ignore what's affecting us. Okay, something is affecting us. Okay, and I'm going to give a couple examples of this, and we ignore it, hoping that it will disappear or hoping that it won't get as bad, right? So, for example, in relationships, so many times we ignore things, right? Because we don't want to get into conflict. And so let me just not touch it there. Let me just not look there because I don't want to go through pain because I know this is going to become a conflict and I don't want to go through that conflict, or because it's not that important to me. And so I want us to look at this situation because we already know when we bring this up, it sounds so dumb in a way, right? Because we know this is not the solution, but we still do it. Like we still ignore it, hoping just for tonight, right? Because we're tired. I just came from work. I don't want to argue, right? And so instead of doing something about it just for tonight, because tonight I'm really tired and I don't want to argue and I just want to have my dinner in peace, I'm just not going to say anything. But we don't notice that not saying anything, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's at work, for a long term, becomes us resisting the evolution and us reaching the higher potential in our lives because we're arguing with where reality wants to take us to evolve. And by resisting conflict and by resisting the uncomfortable and uncertainty part of our lives, we just stay small. And we then ask unconsciously, we're asking the universe for a bigger sign, right? We're asking for a push because with this little bit of a push, we're not going to act, right? Because we give ourselves those type of excuses and we see it yet too small, right? It's so small. It's just a little argument about the dishes. So that's not going to really, matter. No, those are the ones that really matter. Those are the ones that really matter. The ones that just make you a little bit irritated. Those are the ones that really matter. Those are the ones that we are arguing against reality when we don't acknowledge them, approach them, and work underneath them. So I want to make something really clear. What I'm saying here, when I say stop arguing with reality, is what I'm really saying is instead of not doing anything about it, which would be the argument, right? Because reality is telling you, hey, look at this, right? Look at this. This is bothering you. There's something here. There's a new quality here trying to come through you, but it's through this door of triggering. And when I argue with this reality is when I say, no, I don't want to look at it, right? I don't want to go through the uncomfortableness of that. So no, right? It seems like I'm not arguing, like I'm just not, I'm actually a peaceful person, but I'm arguing because I'm saying no. What I am inviting you to do is to look underneath. So it's not really about stop arguing, so ignore it, no, or accept it just like it is. No, When I say stop arguing with reality, what I'm really saying is look underneath, right? So look underneath the irritation for the dishes in the sink. Look underneath the trigger for feeling pressure last minute when you leave the house. Like, look for the meaning on the very small things. Because when you look for the meaning on the very small things, you are saying to the universe, I see the sign and I am willing to go through anything that is here because I have no doubt that what you're showing me is an opportunity of growth. When I have that doubt, right? When I have that doubt, then what I am telling the universe is, bring me a bigger sign, right? Give me a bigger sign. And so the universe is like, oh, she couldn't listen to that. It's too low, right? She couldn't hear it. She passed it through. We need to be louder. We need to explode more in front of her. Yeah. And so we don't notice this because it's too small, and we haven't coded that, oh, if it's small, I can just let it pass because this is part of the sacrifice I do for other people. This is what I want to go into next point here of when we argue with reality. Correct, it is an argument within yourself. Yes, exactly. So the problem gets worse. Exactly. So the second thing here is there is a general belief, right, that the terminology in psychology here is fun, which is one of the 4 reactions, the 4F reactions that we do when our subconscious sees that or feels that we are in danger, meaning we're not feeling safe, right? Our parasympathetic system goes off and we can go into 4 different reactions. One of those reactions is funning. What funning is that we then say, suppress everything that you need and, please the other person. It's a scientific way of saying people pleasing, right? And so in that moment, what I do is, just for example, let's say, what do you want to eat? The typical example, right? What do you want to eat? Whatever you want, that's fine with me. The moment you become this really easygoing person that it's like, I'd rather not communicate and be who I want to be, because it's better just for easiness of everything to just let the other person decide. Be careful. Be careful, because very few times that really is a reaction of, I don't really care where I want to eat. A lot of times, this is a learned behavior that comes from a trauma response, right? Where we completely diminish and suppress anything that is within us. And we do it so unconsciously. We do it so unconsciously. A lot of times, we've done it for so many years that we don't really know what our opinion is about something. We don't really know what is it that I actually feel here about this, because I have suppressed it for so long in order to feel safe since I was a kid, probably, that I don't really have access to those emotions within me, okay? So that is another big sign that I am arguing with reality. Yeah, that's another big sign that I am saying no to evolution, right? Because that is a reaction. There's many of those, right? There's fight, there's flight, but this one particular can go so unseen because it is rewarded by society, right? Because, oh, she's too nice, right? She's so friendly, or he is, right? Or he is so easygoing, right? Oh, and so you get this safety from the admiration of other people in that reaction. Isn't that a crazy cycle to go through? And so when you find yourself, observe yourself in those little, like it's the more important ones, again, are the little, very seldom tiny moments. Those are the most important ones. And I'm not here to say, to judge that you're doing that. I do it all the time. What I'm here to say is like to find those moments throughout the day where we can be curious about it. Be like, okay, ask yourself this question. If I wasn't with this person right now and I was by myself in this city, right? Or in this moment, what would I have for lunch? That, in just that example that I gave you, what would I have for lunch? Would it really be anything? Or what would be my pick? What would be, and and that can start helping you bring about, a process where we're not unconsciously avoiding conflict. Because a lot of times we do it unconsciously. And when I avoid conflict, I am arguing with reality. Because reality is life pushing me through my triggers to evolve in a way in which I can be conscious about a new quality that wants to come through me, that wants to reveal itself. It's already in me, but I haven't seen it, right? And life wants us to grow. We are like a plant, literally, right? But if I don't go through the growing pains of taking, now making one leaf come out, well, those of you who've had pregnancies with real, there's all sorts of pregnancies of life, but a real human being pregnancy, there is no newborn quality or newborn anything in this creation, in this universe, without pain. So the moment I say no to pain, whether it's growing pain, whether it is grief pain, whatever pain it is, I am saying no to evolution. I am saying no to reality. And so how can I flow with reality and that uncertainty more than saying no? So I gave you 2 signs to look through, right? Let's just review those. When I'm ignoring what's affecting me, I already know it's affecting me, but I ignore it, I suppress it, right? A lot of times because it's too small, who cares, that's not gonna make a change. Or when I'm funny, meaning I am unconsciously betraying myself, probably because a lack of knowing myself or a lack of really connecting with myself, because I probably never learned how to do that, because probably my caregivers were never connected to themselves, therefore they never connected to me. And so fun as a response that comes from a childhood unresolved trauma that I haven't really seen before. And it's also very small. And because I've done it throughout my whole life, I've normalized it. Okay? Those are 2 places in which I can see how I am arguing with reality. Another place is when I am making allies with victimhood. And this, a lot of us have heard, don't be a victim. Don't be a victim. Like, that's the last thing that you want to do. But yet we still become a victim very often in our lives without noticing. And that is because getting into that victim mode, it's not just when I am saying, oh, poor me, what, life is happening, this is the worst, I'm going through a really bad time. We have it kind of confused in there, like, what's the fine line between can I express my emotions and not suppress what's going through me? And when am I being negative and actually being a victim? That line is very blurry for us because we don't really understand how I can dance or embody those energies in a healthy way for me. Okay. So what's the big difference? And the big difference is what I was talking about at the beginning, which is I can acknowledge pain And not only can I, but acknowledging pain is what's going to be dependent on my health, right? Because if I suppress my pain, if I suppress my low, heavy, frequent, dense frequency emotions like anger and sadness, even jealousy, envy, if I suppress those emotions, then that is going to transmute into an autoimmune system, probably autoimmune illness, probably, right? So when I am able to acknowledge my low frequency emotions, okay, and at the same time, the key word here is and at the same time or simultaneously, right? I can also acknowledge my light, my courage, my power, both at the same time. That is the healthy path of alignment and transparency. Now, victimhood is when I am stuck into I can only see is the suffering of my pain. Does that make sense? Notice this new word, suffering, right? The suffering is what comes from only noticing pain, meaning my range, my range of accessing emotions is so tiny that I can only see one dark tunnel. I cannot see beyond that. And I'm not saying that's really bad that you're there. No, where a lot of us are there, and one of the hardest parts of the separation that I'm going through right now is it's getting stuck in that place. And when we get stuck in that place, hopefully we have tools to get out of there, a friend, a book, or a specific routine, working with our nervous system so that we get the toxins of the low frequency emotions out of our body, etc., etc. But right now in this talk, what we're doing is noticing, right? Highlighting what's one and what's the other. And so when I am in victim mode, look at all the ways in which I can be in victim mode. One way is by victimizing myself with you in order to be on your side. A lot of times, in order for me to be your friend, what do I do? Oh, I'm going to victimize myself with you. That's one place where we do it. When we're doing that, we're arguing with reality. We're arguing with reality in and of itself, with the reality that life is for you and never against you. And so all circumstances in your life, no matter how uncomfortable and uncertain, they are for your growth. They are for your evolution. And so when you tell me as a friend, oh, can you believe my mother said this and it's the worst part of life? And you have the space to do that. And then my action from that is, oh yeah, that is the worst. You should feel really bad. And I am victimizing myself with you in order to support you. And so notice when we do that, what would we want to do instead of that? Instead of that, we would want to hold space for that person. I'm not saying it's easy. But I'm saying, hey, let's talk about this more so that we can remember, right? Because this is all we need. We just need to remember. Yeah. So what are other times in which I victimize myself? Well, I victimize myself when I complain, of course, right? I victimize myself when I do things that are smaller than my capacity. What does that mean, right? Like I reaffirm with action, I back up a small view of myself. I'm actually going to give you an example of a friend of mine. I could give you many examples of me. especially right now, because it's so comfortable. It's so tempting to go into the small you, especially if you're going through, a big crisis in your life. If you're not necessarily going through a phase of crisis, it's still tempting to stay really comfortable. And one thing is to stay comfortable, and another thing is to back up that comfortableness with actions. You take that to the next level of arguing with reality. And that could be things like for example, yes, I have a fear that I'm never going to be able to travel, or I'm not going to be able to travel this year, right? So what are the actions that I do to back that up? Some of them are unconscious, but some of them can be conscious, right? So I would just be like, oh, then I'm not going to renew my password. I'm not going to spend money on that, on renewing my password, because I'm not going to be able to travel anyways, right? A lot of times we do that, right? And so if I am already afraid of uncertainty, a lot of times in order for us to feel even more secure, we then take a deep step to stay in that secureness, right? Oh, I'm not going to be able to leave this job because I really need it because I have this type of expenses coming in. So let me just then buy a whole metro ticket for the whole year because I'm going to have to be going to this place, right? So reaffirming a small version of you, we do that obviously consciously and unconsciously. That is arguing with reality. And again, for those of you that are coming in right now, it's like, what is the problem with arguing with reality again? Well, the problem arguing with reality is that reality is life, taking you through the next evolution of your life, the next step of evolving and growing in your life. And that has to, because this is life, in a way, go through inconvenience, through uncomfortableness, through uncertainty. And us resisting that pain makes us argue with reality. Us resisting that pain makes us stay small and not reach our highest potential. Us resisting that pain or that uncomfortableness is us saying no to evolution. It's us saying no to growth. It's us saying no getting pregnant with a new project, with a new baby, with a new idea, with a new way in which we can express our gifts and dispense our gifts into this world. And I understand because sometimes the pain is so big that it feels so unbearable, right? And that we just rather again and again to stay comfortable in whatever that victim place is. Especially if we're passing, nobody's noticing. If it's not like a big deal, this is what I'm saying, when it's a big crisis, you have no choice. I wouldn't say you have no choice, but you have a lot more moments in which you would have to show yourself vulnerable. And vulnerability is one of the things that we're most afraid of, right? Because we are then showing our wounds and our darkest places. And a lot of times we're afraid of that because we haven't even been able to show it to ourselves, right? When I am not able to see my own most darkest part of me, oh my God, no puedo hablar inglés hoy. When I cannot see the darkest places within me, I cannot process them, welcome them, accept them, then it's really hard for me to show myself vulnerable. I'm not even talking to the world. I'm just even saying with your best friend, with your brother, your sister, with your partner, even with your mother, your father, even with your children, right? If I have a really huge resistance to show myself vulnerable, what does that mean? that I'm arguing with reality. And if I'm arguing with reality, I'm saying no to evolution. If I'm saying no to evolution, I'm saying no to my highest potential. Okay, that's the formula. That's why I'm always saying it's the seldom things that irritate you. It's the seldom things that irritate you what you want to pay attention. Because when you don't pay attention to the little things, and believe me, I have done it. When you don't pay attention, we all do it. When we don't pay attention to the little things, what happens is we're telling the universe, send me a louder sign, right? Make it louder. Make this problem bigger so that I can act on it, that I can see it. Otherwise, it's just a little fight, right? I'd rather ignore it because I don't want to go into conflict. Yeah? Okay, last of the signs that we are arguing against reality is that we're probably over consuming. And so again, these are signs that I wanted to bring up for you and for me, because I need to notice this. This talk is so much for me, believe me. It's impactful for my system to hear myself saying this out loud, right? And so the last one is overconsumption. What does this mean? Notice, right? My invitation is notice. When and where are you overconsuming? Because there is probably, even if it's defaulted, there is a leveler inside you that it's always capable of telling you, you're overdoing this, right? And this equals to our desire to numb, right? Because another way that we have to resist reality and argue against it, besides funning that I just talked about, is to numbing, right? Numbing is similar to funning, but except that we do a lot of it in secret, and a lot of it we have excuses for it. And so there's different levels of it and different categories of your life. And this depends on many other childhood unhealed traumas as well. But a lot of the times we just go into overdoing something, right? Because when we overdo it, we get into a space of numbing. And so when you're over-consuming media, when you're over-consuming food, when you're overdoing anything, when you're overdoing anything without harmony, or most importantly, sleepwalking, right? When you're doing it in automatic, this is why paying attention is so important, right? Because when you are sleepwalking into it and you're not conscious about it, it's a lot more. It's way harder to stop doing it, and it's a lot more hurtful. Like it's the change to the work to transform that. It's going to be a lot more challenging. Versus you can be over consuming, but you can do it consciously. I'll give you an example of this. I always give this example. When I first divorced, because I've done it a couple of times. When I first divorced, I remember I had a new job, right? And I got to that job, and I remember from my job to the house, to going back home, I never wanted to go back home because I was still going through the grief of the process. And I remember always, or very often, I don't know how many times, but that was so long ago, but probably about 3 times a week, I don't know, I would stop by a thrift store. I love thrift stores. Thrift stores are, so I don't necessarily, it's not a weakness in the sense that I spend a lot of money in it. It's the high that it gives me. It's more about searching for stuff, and like when you find something like, oh my God, this is like treasure, oh no, yeah, that's good, because I've done it a couple of times, yeah. And so I would just go in the high that we get in my numbing, my conscious numbing, I should call it, was just to like search for stuff. But I was very conscious about it. That was a huge difference, right? I remember telling myself, okay, sort of like you're taking an ibuprofen or, some sort of painkiller for a moment being. And I was okay of doing that as a cushion between transitioning from work to my house. And it would work. And it was because I was super conscious about it. Okay. So there is a big difference. It's kind of like when people say, if you're eating a hamburger or like junk food or whatever it is, that a donut or whatever, could be really bad for your system. There is a difference of eating it with like the regret and the shame and the blame and the guilt, right? Because the energy, it's all about energy. The energy does matter. Than eating it with like the happiest day, oh my God, this is going to be so amazing, this burger. Like, and that also depends on how aware you are. So one of the I would say that this gives us levels, right? One of the worst levels that we can find ourselves in, again, very human. I'm not saying worst in the sense of like to judge you. Again, we're all there often, right? It's just more like bring it up, like notice it, even if it's in back mode. Back mode meaning as you reflect back, right, in retrospect, because your subconscious doesn't know the difference. This is something super important. When you're reflecting about something that you've done in your life and you find integration and reflection, and you can work around that process, you are still healing because your subconscious doesn't know if you're imagining something, if you're remembering something, if you are hoping for something, or if you're really seeing it in front of you. This is why when we play the same, bad moments again and again, we can trigger our body to feel that trauma again and again, because our subconscious mind doesn't know that this is not really happening again, right? Our subconscious mind thinks it's happening again and again. This is why, when they were training astronauts to go into the space, and they're doing a specific exercises of sport, what's triggering in their body as getting better, it's real because your subconscious mind doesn't know you're not there. So retrospect works. And so this is why it's powerful to do this noticing, witnessing, observing, right? Where in my life did I unconsciously overconsume to numb myself as an action of going against reality? Where in my life have I done that? Do I do that? Or do I feel tempted to do that? When I found myself at that time, I remember like, okay, just do it consciously, give yourself 2 days to go to the thrift stores. And it was something that was working for me. I don't remember for how long I did it. I probably did it for like 3 weeks or so, but it worked for me. What I'm saying here, it's like, it's nothing is really bad in and of itself or good in and of itself. Why is it also relative? Because it's relative in the proportion that we bring it to our consciousness, right? That how conscious we are in that moment. And a lot of times we're not conscious, and we need a friend or somebody that brings us that light, right? That light and says, hey, look at this, right? Look at here, light up this space because we can't see it. And other times we are able to see it, right? Sometimes we shift from one to the other. Okay, this is it. So we talked about those 4 points about how to recognize when you're arguing with reality. And again, the suggestion, the question here, what I want to inspire you, invite you to do, and invite myself and suggest myself is I want us to, it's not that we're going to accept reality as it is. It's not about accepting reality in the sense that we become a doormat. Okay, do whatever you want because reality is the best. Not necessarily. I'm not calling for not setting boundaries or doing any of that. we can do both at the same time. They are not exclusive, they're inclusive. So we can set boundaries, we can take action on what reality is telling us. However, we want to go underneath what's happening, not against what's happening. Do you see the difference? Going against reality is ignoring it, suppressing it, denying it, acting as if it's not there, and thinking it's going to disappear. But we want to go underneath it, like we want to pull up the rug and be like, why does this irritate me? Even if it's just for 1 second and it's just dirty dishes, go underneath the rug and go through that so that you're not asking for a louder sign, right? That you're not asking for something bigger than that. This is going to stay recorded on my YouTube channel, not here, okay? So we're done, but I do want to invite you to Luna's membership if you want to go deeper on subjects like this. This week, by the way, we're having our mastermind on how to hold yourself accountable. I also want to invite you to my newsletter list so that you know when I open the doors for my 90-day program, Conscious Woman Roadmap. And you can also take my master classes without being part of the membership. Also sign up for my YouTube channel. I do other videos that are not these lives. And so stay tuned and hopefully we'll get in touch and work deeper on all of these things together so that we can experience life in a more fulfilling way. Thank you, Auntie Tina. Thank you, Caro. Thank you, Nadia. Love seeing you all here today. Happy week. Wish me a lot of love and light. I'm moving to a whole new place today. I'm consciously uncoupling, transitioning to a lot of things that has happened to me. I love you all and thank you for your support. Coming here, it's a really good relief and fulfilling moment for me. Besos.